Peace and welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast Horror with your host, me, Crystal Connor, hailing all the way from Seattle, Washington, and
me, Lady Shasha, the mistress of the snark, coming to you from sunny Orlando, Florida,
where we talk about all things horror from sea to shining sea and sometimes abroad. Hi, guys. So this episode, we are going to be talking about a domestic horror and international horror, two movies with the same name called The Binding.
Can I say the reason why we're doing that?
Go ahead.
Because I watched The Wrong Binding, not realizing that there were two. So then
there's actually three, I think. There was another one from 2014. So yeah, so Miss Sasha watched The Wrong Binding, but luckily for you guys, that means you get an extra video. So she did The Binding that was released in the United States in 2010, and I think it was 2014 or 15. Oh, it's a little 2016.
Yeah, you're right. 2016.
And then I did The Binding that was 4 years later, 2020. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off. We're going to let Sasha talk about The Binding circa 2016.
Yes, I watched this on Amazon Prime, thankfully. And it starts with a very ominous dream sequence, which I felt like it was done pretty effectively. I don't have to say this because you guys already know me, how I feel about color grading. And I know I'm one to talk. This camera that I'm using right now is on a laptop. I can't white balance it. I know the coloring right here probably looks a little funny, but I'm not a professional filmmaker. So it goes without saying, I don't love the color grading. And sometimes it kind of looked like a yogurt commercial to me. This looks like a commercial. I just want to get that one out of the way before we get started.
Okay.
I have another gripe, and then I'll get to the better things about it. The other gripe I had about this was too many close-up shots. There were too many scenes of people talking, and you just see like this much. And I'm like, you can do a wide shot of both people in frame talking to each other. That's okay. Everything doesn't have to be so close up all the time. It makes it too repetitive when you do that. So I wish they would have varied how they shot certain things.
You felt like they were all up in your personal space?
No, I just felt like it wasn't as dynamic as it could have been. You know what the problem is? Because I love 70s and 80s horror so much, that's the barometer that I use for things. And there was so much
really high.
Yes, they did so much with cinematography. They did so much. They would mount a camera and follow somebody up a spiral staircase if they had to.
Yep, they did.
And now it's like you don't even have the trouble they would have with that because they had to use these huge giant cameras and rigs. You literally have the capacity to do that with such a smaller equipment, and you're not doing it. It's like it's actually easier for you to do the things that they did then. It's easier for you to do now, and yet you don't do them. So it kind of gave me the filmmakers had more money than skill as far as, the basis of filmmaking. There was no score.
Oh, there really wasn't.
Yeah, there was no score. My sister was walking back and forth while the movie was on, and she said that she liked that there was no score. I didn't really care for it to be completely without score the whole movie. And I didn't think the writing of the dialogue was that great. And the thing about it was because you have so few characters, I feel like the dialogue has to be very, very strong and the acting has to be very, very strong. And the thing that was great was the actual basis of the story. They had great bones there. They had a good story to tell. I liked the idea and the concept of the story, but it fell short because they didn't have a strong enough actor. And I was saying that if you did a movie like The Shining or Amityville or the Amityville Horror, and you didn't have strong actors like Jack Nicholson and James Brolin, they would have fell flat. But also you have to give them something to work with. And I felt like this actor, I'm not going to completely blame him because some of the lines he was given, it was really hard for him to make them work. So I'm not blaming him totally. I think some of the dialogue could have been written better and juicier to give him something to really work with.
The thing, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but for me, if the story is strong, then I can forgive the acting. I'm going to always bring up, not Jesus Mommy. This is a B-rate movie that is like everything that you imagine a B-rate movie being, with the really weird camera angles, the bad acting, the bad lighting, but the story is so strong that it carries it through. And with the binding that you're reviewing, I felt the same way. The subject was so strong that I didn't mind the like everything that you're mentioning, I didn't even notice. Like I didn't even notice. And with his lines, for me, because he was so like, you haven't even talked about the movie yet, so I can't even like give my commentary. You're just telling us all what you don't like, but like, can you tell us about the movie so I can tap in?
I can overlook bad acting as well. That's why I love this particular actor that's in Dolomite, where he only has one line and he delivers it so bad that I love it. It's like, you should be paying me. I am Joe Blow, the lover man.
My $100, Joe. Nigga, did you take my money?
That's right, little bitch. I took it back. You ain't worth no $100. I am Joe Blow, the lover man. You should be paying me, bitch.
It's amazing. But yeah, he wasn't bad enough for it to be entertaining. But I do, going back to the story, this is going to be a spoiler review. I liked the story that it kind of has an ambiguity between whether a person has a mental illness or whether what they're saying about religion really happened. And in this case, the main characters are a priest, his wife, and their baby daughter. And the should I call him a priest or a preacher? Because he's married, and I don't think
But he had on a clerical collar.
Yeah, he had a collar. Some preachers do. Yeah, I'm just going to call him a married priest. Okay, so the married priest, opening sequence is, you know, the dream sequence with his wife, which is pretty much ominous and kind of foreshadowing. Then it cuts to them having their daughter's baptism. No, it wasn't a baptism. It was a christening.
Christening.
Yeah, and shortly after the christening, he says that he had a vision that he was visited by God and that God directed him to kill his only child.
We don't find that out right away, but like when he first told his wife that, one of the things that I liked a lot was her, not only her devout belief in God, but her devout belief in her husband. She did not doubt for 1 minute that what he was telling her was true, because he didn't tell her what God said right away. It was 33 days later. And I wonder if that is a significant number of days within the religious community. I'm not sure, but and the reason he didn't tell her is because, like Sasha just said, he was told to kill his only child. And so I'm sure even Abraham was like, is this the right thing to do? So yeah, I'm gonna stop here so that you can keep talking so that I can like tap in once you hit another point.
I liked how they went through the whole psychiatric evaluation and trying to figure out what's really going on and getting him help. And another thing that I like was there was a subplot about the wife's personal development, where initially she goes to visit her mother with her child and they're looking through a photo album and she's like, well, what happened to this person? And the mother's like, oh, well, she passed away because, you know, her son killed her and he, you know, acted very oddly before that happened. And she was very heartless in how she, and judgmental. And she was just very much like, oh, well, she should have known the signs and she should have done this, and she wouldn't have ended up floating in a pool. And she was just very heartless about it. And then
she was very sanctimonious and judgmental.
Yeah. And then another time they showed her being this way is when her new neighbors, they waved to her and she kind of like gives them a little bit of a head nod, but not really waving back to them. So then I believe it was a few days later, one of them came over with some cookies and was just introducing himself and his husband. And she acted kind of funky at the door again and threw the cookies away. So she was being judgmental. Oh yeah, she was being super judgmental and rude to them because they were a gay couple. And I love how it highlighted that the same people that can sit in the church pew every Sunday can still not treat people well at all. So I love that the movie explored that, and also how she ended up changing. She ended up becoming a little bit less judgmental of other people. And she even went over and apologized to her neighbor. So I thought that was a really good part of the movie. Also, as there were some movies, I should say, there's some parts of the movie that do remind me of other movies. And you know how I kind of talked bad about the cinematography with the shooting too close and my love of 70s movies, but it actually reminded me of a 70s movie during the time period where the wife was taking the husband to his medical appointments. When they took him to do the CAT scan, that sequence reminded me of The Exorcist when they took Reagan to the hospital and she had to do the different tests that they had her do. I don't know what it's called, the one where they I think they were getting spinal fluid when they put the needle in her neck. I don't recall what the proper medical term for that is, but that sequence reminded me of The Exorcist a bit. So I like them doing that. And it was also a really great scene. Hopefully we can find a screenshot of this, where the husband is in front of the window and it's dark in the room and there's just blue light coming through the window. And it's the best shot in the movie. It's really great.
Really? Because I thought one of the best shots in the movie was when the wife is in the beginning of the movie where she falls because she's hearing her baby cry and she can't find her, and so she falls onto her knees and she's praying, and the way the window panes are, the light that's falling on her is in the form of a cross.
That one was nice too. It was. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, whoever edits this, even if we have to go pull up the movie and take a picture of the TV set, we're putting those images in this video so you can see that. That was done really well. It also reminded me of another movie. Did you ever see The Invitation?
Oh my God, I loved The Invitation. I loved it, especially because of the ending. My idea as a horror writer and a horror reviewer and a lover of all things horror, and just like from stories, the most important part of your story is the ending. You can make or break a story with the ending. And I think what won Sasha over from our last episode when we were doing Asmodexia is the ending, because she wasn't really like feeling it until the big reveal. And then she's saying with this one, you're saying that the ending also like made you like go, whoa. And The Invitation is the exact same way. The Invitation, if you guys haven't seen it, go, I think you can watch it on Netflix. The ending, it feels like you're getting kicked in the throat.
I also I tried to look up information on this movie because a lot of it felt like a stage play more so than a film.
That's probably why there was no score.
And I thought that's probably why some of the dialogue, I couldn't find any information as to whether it was originally conceived as a play, but when you adapt something from a play to the screen, it gives you the opportunity to take more advantage of showing rather than just telling all the time, because it's a film format. On stage, you can only do so much because you only have that stage. But in a movie, there's so many things that were conversations that they could have shown more subtlety than just people talking.
I think maybe the reason his dialogue was the way that it was, because once we realize what's going on, it is really inner turmoil, right? And he is doing everything he can, because by the time we find out what's happening, what he's being told to do, he is like a boiler under too much pressure. The way that he's walking around, the way that he's like, the controlled speech, he's in inner turmoil because he is a priest and he is believing that the words that he's hearing is from God, and he wants to be obedient. However, this is his firstborn child. So I think the reason he's talking like that, the way he's moving like that, showcases his inner turmoil and the things that he's dealing with, because it's not easy.
There was one person who's acting I do want to highlight. Let me look I wrote down her character.
Was it the sister?
Yeah, she was a sister. The actress' name is Katie Parker, and she played Sam. And she knocked it out of the park. She did the best job, in my opinion, of all the actors in the movie, just recounting the story about her brother and what happened to her mother. And if everyone had delivered their lines the way she did, this movie would have been great. She just really did a phenomenal job.
And she's another person who's living with a bunch of a lot of guilt and a lot of inner turmoil, because when she tells her what she would have done differently, you're just like, whoa, right? Because it was her brother, but you know, she would have done what was necessary to save her mom. And the reason, I can't remember the blonde lady's name, the mother of this baby, the reason she went to her during her character development was trying to figure out, like, okay, I need some more information. What's going on with my husband? And so she finds herself not so judgmental anymore because, you know, now she has someone who could be lying in the pool too. And that's when she went to that girl. They were friends from high school to like just talk to her.
I did not pick up on the fact that they were friends from high school. I
Yeah, they used to
remember.
live next door to each other.
Ah,
Yeah. So childhood acquaintance, they live next door to each other. Yeah.
I would definitely say if you're very patient, give it a watch, because I would say the first 20 minutes, I wasn't sold. I was like, oh my God, this is me, the first 20 minutes. You ever see a picture of Tupac and he's just sitting there?
Oh my God.
I'll put the GIF in this. And that's how I felt for the first 20 minutes. Then it started to pick up steam as they were trying to figure out whether the husband's problem was psychological or whether what he was saying was true.
I really like the first 20 minutes is what hooked me, because there was like tiny signs in the beginning, right? Because at her christening, lights blew out in the church.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Is that normal? And then the next day, when he tells his wife that he, you know, was spoken to from God, she she won me over right then, because she believed him. Not one moment of hesitation. She was like, oh my God, my husband, hey, what did he say? Let's pray together. And so like, that's how she won me over. But then when we flash forward 33 days later, when they're in the in marriage counseling, she's pissed off. And then we find out there were other things that were going on in their marriage that she was patient through. And then that's the big reveal where he tells them what God is telling him to do. And then it just, for me, I mean, it was already like going uphill. I was like in the roller coaster, and then boom, there we go, straight down. One of the things that kind of pissed me off about his mentor is after the exorcism, because he didn't, when she came outside and because she, even though everything was going wrong, she did not consider, I don't think, leaving her husband. She was by his side the whole entire time. She didn't file for divorce. She was trying to figure out what to do. And so they performed an exorcism, because they went and saw this other doctor who was like, let's just say, and I liked that part, because I always, and my sister, she's a clinical psychologist, and I all things horror and occult. And I asked my sister, I was like, how do you know if someone tells you they're hearing God, if they're telling the truth, or are you going to diagnose them with schizophrenia? And that's always a question that like gives her pause, because we grew up in a Christian household, and, you know, we like the same type of movies. And she was like, you know, I would refer to them, you know, because like the Catholics also have psychiatrists just for this reason. And so the mentor sent him to this other psychiatrist who was also a Catholic, practicing Catholic, high in the hierarchy. And so at dinner time, when, and this is another reason why I loved her so much, because she was pissed off at the doctor, because he was going a roundabout way of saying what he needed to say. And she's like, my husband needs help. What the fuck are you talking about, right? And so he tells him, he's like, stop listening to what you think it is and listen to what you know. He's like, you've just assumed it was God. He's like, when he's talking to you, what do you hear? What do you see? And he's like, I see light. And he's like, how do you feel? And he's like, I feel all bright and uplifted. And he's like, now, are you sure it's God, or are you talking to the light bearer? He's like, stop focusing on what you think it is and look at what you see. And so there's an exorcism performed in this movie. It's kind of lackluster. The priest kind of phoned it in. And at the end of it, when he's leaving and she comes outside because she's really hoping that her husband is okay, she's like, is this gonna work? And this is when I really stopped liking this priest from the beginning. I really was super angry with him because he was like, you need to believe it and he needs to believe it. Like, don't falter. But then right before he gets in his car, he's like, but if Sky is in danger, call the police. So did the exorcism work or not? Like, are you kidding me? Like, and then like, it didn't seem like it, because when he gets back into his parish and the lights are going down, you know, the thing with his eyes, like the movies show you that he's possessed. And I'm like, fucking hell, it didn't even work.
I like how you brought up how people in the psychiatric field deal with, I would say, like religious things or supernatural things, because I've wondered that myself, because years ago when I was undergoing treatment for depression, I would go to the therapist and talk things out. And then I also did cognitive behavioral therapy for my ADHD. And sometimes they'll ask you questions and it's like, if I say the truth, will they write down that I'm crazy? Because they'll ask you something like, do you believe in ghosts? Now that's a very, I guess, tricky question. If I told them, oh yeah, I experienced a ghost one time, would they write down, oh, she's crazy? When really, I really experienced a ghost, but I didn't tell them that because I didn't know what type of therapist they were, whether they were a science only and none of that exists, or someone who has a more theological view of things. So it's really, really an interesting subject that they brought up in the movie.
And the reason I bring it up is because I see it, like that's a common thing that we see in movies where someone is saying that they're being possessed, or normally it's because they're being possessed. No one is ever saying they're hearing voices from God, and they're telling the psychiatrist what they're seeing and experiencing, and the psychiatrist always writes it off as schizophrenia or whatever else, whatever other diagnosis will.
Oh, I remember reading a few years ago, a lot of people that are empaths, a lot of them get diagnosed with anxiety because they don't realize that they are experiencing other people's emotions when they come in proximity. And it takes them years to figure out, oh, these are not even my own emotions I'm experiencing. It's these other people that I'm having what do I call them? Empaths ability or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting.
But because of, I think the reason that other idea was brought up was because that second psychiatrist was a man of faith. He was a man of faith first. And a lot of people maybe not know that exorcisms are not how you see them in the movies. The Vatican has a whole entire higher education system that deals with exorcisms, and they have clinical psychiatrists, they have paranormal investigators, they have people who are skilled in heavenly warfare on a earthly level, and a lot of times exorcisms do end in deaths, and oftentimes they have to be repeated. So that, because of them being Catholic, that resource was already there for him, which is why it would allow the other priests to suggest that maybe, because even though the voice you're hearing is divine, it may not be of God.
Yes. Should we get into how it ended?
Yes.
Okay. I really like the ending scene because it was a very, oh shit moment, because the climax of the movie is at night she's going to bed with her baby, and generally she locks the door.
Not generally, because she had just come back home after the exorcism, and the priest didn't give her very much confidence that it worked. So she was living with her mom, and so he told her, I'm cured, I'm taking medicine, you know, let's take it slow. Like, if you don't want to come home yet, I'm okay with that. And it gave her confidence because she loved her husband and she wanted it to work out to come home. And then one of the stipulations was that she wanted him to still sleep on the couch. And he's like, okay, I don't mind that at all. And so they were laying in bed, and then she got up and she locked the door.
Yeah. And then on this final night, she didn't lock the door. because she thought that things would be okay. So she did not lock the door that one last time. And she woke up to him standing over her with a gun. And they tussled because she's trying to protect her baby. And he oh God, he brutalized her. He punched her in the face, kicked her in the face.
He kicked her,
choked her.
Yeah.
Yeah, threw her
and
out
when
of the
she
room.
screamed, he put that Glock down her throat. I was like, who taught you that? Like, were you in the military? Like, oh my God. And so yeah, it was pretty bad.
So he kicks her out of the room, and she passes out, and she thinks all is lost when she goes back in that room, because she sees him on the floor bleeding. She doesn't hear the baby yet, so she thinks all is lost. Come to find out, he cut himself, or maybe the baby cut him. I don't know. Considering how this ended, maybe the baby cut him. I don't know. But his stomach was bleeding out, and the baby sits up in the bed, and is fine. And she picks up the baby.
So one of the things that we forgot to talk about is why God is telling him to kill his child. So he is having, not only is he getting visions from God, or he's here, God is talking to him. God is also showing him visions, and he's saying, if you don't kill this kid, it will be the end times, all is lost. And so he's thinking, this baby is the second coming of Lucifer. And so that's why he was meant to do what he was supposed to do. My idea of why things went awry is because he fucking cheated, right? So there's a scene where he's talking to, at the end, where he's in the room with her and she's tied up, and he's like, I figured out a way around it. He's like, I know what to do, right? He's like, because when Abraham went to kill his son, he didn't do it because the angel came down and stopped his hand. He's like, so all I have to do is get to the point where I'm going to kill my child. The thing is, though, you can't trick God. And he was supposed to actually kill her. And so
that's why he said he didn't come. He was talking about the angel. The angel didn't come.
Right. Because he wasn't committed. He thought he could trick them, right? He was like, I will act like I'm going to do it, because he was telling his wife, he's like, don't worry about it, because I know what to do. I just need to pretend like I'm going to follow the instructions, and then the angel will come. The angel didn't come because he wasn't obeying God fully. When God tells you to do something, you do it. You need to be absolutely committed in your heart, in your soul, in your thoughts, and in your actions. And because he thought that he would just go through the motions, that would save him, God was like, oh, okay, you want to, okay, do it your way then. And so then that's what happened. That's what I think happened, because he wasn't obedient. The reason Abraham didn't have to kill his son was because he was obedient. God said, kill your son. He's like, done, right? God tells, what's his name? Simon, kill your daughter. And he's like, well, hold on. Let me think about it. I think if he had of, I don't know, right? Because she ended up being the second coming of Lucifer. I think that he cheated. And so, that's what happened. He cheated. And so he didn't get the angel because he wasn't obedient. And that's just my opinion.
And then it cuts to the very ending, where she's sitting overlooking the city, holding her baby. Now, this is a place that they used to go together. She would go with her husband and her son. I mean, daughter. Sorry. Yeah. The reason why I did that Freudian slip, the baby is played by a male actor. It's a little.
Is he really?
Yeah. But he did a good job.
Baby. Yeah. I wouldn't have known.
Yeah. So she returns to their family spot, where they overlook the city, and she's holding the baby. And then you just see a little flicker of light at first. And one section of the city goes dark. Then another section of the city goes dark. And then the darkness just keeps creeping up to her. And then you see her expression. And that's the oh shit moment. He was
right. And then something came up the hill, because she's like looking down at the city, like, and then she looks up and she's like, and then the baby's giggling. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, this happened because her father didn't obey fully. You know what I mean? And like one of the things that I always like think about that I kind of like liked her. I'm sorry, even towards the end, even, you know, I liked her from the very beginning all the way to the end. She was her husband. She was a wife first, trying to do everything that she could to save her husband. And then it was all about her child. And then there was a part of the movie where it was both, right? She was trying to save her family. She loved him. She loved him. She was ride or die, right? And
I didn't like her until she apologized to her neighbors.
Yeah, because right before we get to the ending, you know, she's over her neighbor's house with the baby, and they're like giving, you know, they're all, you know, and then like she's patching up a bunch of relationships. But it was just an incredible movie just because of, like you said, the concept and my idea that he cheated. Like you can't, like, you're a priest, so you know God knows everything. You should have known. And he even said earlier in the movie, God knows what's in my heart. So you thought you would cheat? And the reason why I loved her right away is because I always think about, like, you know, people who believe in Christianity, believe in the second coming, believe that there are messiahs. Not only do Christians believe that there are messiahs, so do Jewish people and people who practice Islam. But like, if a modern day messiah, which what he was, told everyone, we've got to get in this boat, how many of us, even those of us who have a close proximity to Christianity, would believe him, right?
Probably not. No one would believe them.
It would be just like it was with Noah. We would be like, dude, seriously, like, whatever, did you take your medicine? You know what I mean? So like, she didn't do any of that. And I thought that was just really commendable of her. But she loved her husband. She really loved her husband. And she loved her little family, and she was trying to save them. But because he's the head of the household and he didn't do what was told of him, that's what I think.
It kind of speaks to the average person who proclaims themselves to be a Christian, because so many cheat. They proclaim themselves to be Christians, yet they still do things that their religion says they're not supposed to do. According to their religion, if they have a bastard child, both them and their child are supposed to go to hell. But how many people are running around having children out of wedlock but still say they're Christian? If you truly believe that, then you would believe that you and your child are going to hell. So
just like true Christianity, if you divorce your husband or wife, your next marriage is null because it's adultery, because that person's still alive. So but yeah, I think that's the reason why that turned out the way that it is, because he cheated. She actually was more of a Christian than her priest of a husband, because it does have her arc of, you know, being, I'm the preacher's wife and you're a sinner and you're a sinner and you're a sinner. And then now the problem is at home, and she's like, let me find my grace. Let me go apologize. Let me go talk to this girl to see what she could have done different, to see if I can do anything different. I mean, from the very end, she stayed true to her family and true to her faith. And I think that's
her character arc was to me, her character arc was almost better than her husband's.
It was, absolutely. And I think the reason I like the title of this being The Binding, because she was bound by her religion, and by her faith, her love for her husband, and her love for her child. And if maybe her husband would have had that same strong belief system to like see anything through, maybe this movie would have had a different outcome. But like when I watched it, my idea was everything happened because he cheated. He was just like, all I have to do is pretend and the angel will come.
What would you give this movie out of
5 out of 5?
I would say I'm going 3.5 again.
You're such a hard fucking person to please. What the hell?
I'm not, because I like absolute trash is the thing. If you said, oh, what do you give Castle Freak? 5 out of 5 stars.
Original, absolutely, but I'm not going to watch the remake.
Oh, the remake was actually, you might like the remake because they added religious horror to it that wasn't there.
No,
they made his mother a religious zealot that does self-flagellation, and then there was also a second coming element that happens towards it. These things had nothing to do with the original Castle Freak, but they added these things of a second coming and a cult. There's a cult that's also involved. They added all these things that had
No.
That had nothing to do with Castle Freak, but
okay, I'm gonna skip that.
there was a Castle Freak in this movie. but it was more about cults and religious zealotry.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
So they should have just given it a different title. Just give it its own title and say, oh yeah, these elements were
inspired by.
Yeah, it's okay to do that. Like how James Wan did Insidious. Everyone knows it's basically Poltergeist. Even the flip with, like in Poltergeist, they tied a rope around the mother and she had to go into the other world. I forgot what they called in the Poltergeist to go get Carol Ann. And in Insidious, the father had to go into the further to go get Dalton. It's the same story.
It really is. It really is.
He didn't name it, Poltergeist remake. He named it Insidious and said, yes, these elements are inspired by Poltergeist. And people enjoyed it more because they didn't have that
I really didn't.
automatic comparison.
The only part of Insidious I liked was when he was in the between worlds. Everything else, I was like, really? Like, no, whatever. Okay, so that was her binding. My binding is from 2020 and it's out of Italy. So this movie also has a ridiculous opening sequence. It should always happens in the bowels of a church, right? So this opening sequence, we have a woman who's on her hands and knees and she's being held by people, and it looks like the priest is forcing her to drink holy water, and then she's cut a couple of times and they put a mirror in her face and the mirror cracks. So we're like, what in the hell? No explanation or nothing. That's how the movie starts. And then it fast forwards to a happy family driving along the Italian countryside with Francisco, Emma, and Sophia. And we find out that this family is not all the way complete because Emma and Francisco aren't married yet. And he just decided to, pack everybody up and go home to meet the mom without letting her know first. Like he called her like a couple of hours before they arrive. And so she's like, shouldn't you have said something? He's like, no, it's okay. It's a surprise, right? And so they get there. They have a huge ass, again, always these giant houses in the middle of fucking nowhere. This woman's house is a villa. It is like 25 bedrooms in the pristine grape country of Italy. Like unreal, right?
And the grounds around it too. Like this movie gave you a really good sense of space between this big, huge house and this wooded area. Kind of like I hesitate to call it a forest because the trees are I don't know what you would call it. We'll try to put images in here. You guys let us know what you would call this. There's trees, but it's not quite a forest.
Not quite a forest, yeah. Old growth. But yeah, so they get there and we find out that Teresa, who's Francisco's mom, called the whole village, right? So they're it's kind of cool, like it's kind of like the way you imagine Italian aristocrats would live their life. They eat breakfast outside every morning under the sun, and homemade scones and teas and the whole 9 yards, right? Everyone loves Sophia. There's a dog there. Everything is going great until Sophia is bit by a fucking tarantula. Why can't I even say that? Anyway, she gets bit by this giant ass fucking spider, and then the mother comes in. Oh, another thing that's important is Emma's education level. She is a civil engineer and she was living in the city. I can't remember if it was Milan or Rome. And Francisco comes from a country background with country medicine and country home remedies. And so that's the first thing that it's significant, because when Teresa, which is Francisco's mom, comes in and gives Sophia ointment for her bite, Emma's like, what is this? And she's like, oh,
there's a bit of a distrust there.
Yeah. She's like, it's fine. It's just, we've been using it for years and years. It helps for spider bites. And then another thing she gave Sophia was a protection pouch that she didn't let her mom look at or touch. She's like, no, you can't touch it. And then the next thing that flipped Emma out, which would have freaked me out too, is it's a huge castle. The floors are marble. The walls are stone, so it's echoey. You can hear everything. And so she hears this prayer, and she follows it, and she sees Teresa and her housemaid / best friend doing a ritual prayer. And then she like looks a little bit in, and she sees her daughter at the table, and they're pouring something down her throat. And she busts in, she's like, what in the hell have you given my daughter? What have you done to her? And they're like, oh, it's just for protection. Okay. And so then now Emma's pissed. She's like, you know what? This isn't going to work. She needs to see a doctor because she's scratching at her sore and it's not getting better. And so she takes her to the doctor. The doctor is not like the doctor she's accustomed to in the city. He is a country doctor. He probably practices the home remedies more than medical science. So the ointment that he gives Sophia to give to her daughter, she doesn't want to take it. She's like, we're going home in the morning. This isn't going to work, right? And so then Sophia is super getting bad. Like her skin is all itchy. She wakes up in the middle of the night and she's like sleep dreaming, drawing, and she's like scratching the hell out of her skin. And that's when Sophia and Francisco decide that it's time to tell Emma about the family secret, okay? So way back in the day when Francisco was still a boy, there was another woman at the farm or villa who was working there, and he fell in love with her. They were together, and she ended up getting pregnant, and she wanted to keep the baby, and Francisco didn't. So what he did, this little ass boy, he performed a ritual to make her lose her baby. But it didn't go exactly right because he didn't know what he was doing, right? His mother, who is the practitioner, and her best friend, who was the head maid at the time, who is really now her best friend, they are wise in the ways of the dark, right? And so we find out in the beginning sequence, it was these women trying to reverse the spell that her son put on this girl. And for some reason it didn't work, and then she disappeared. And so we find out that and I think that's why those trees were cut down. So we find out later that the spider that bit Sophia was this woman's familiar, and it bound Sophia to this woman. And so what happened, how they were explaining it to Sophia was this woman, as soon as Francisco came back with this child, a child who would have been the same age as their baby if he hadn't fucked things up, it reawakened her spirit, and then now she's bound to the child because that's all she wanted was a daughter. And so they tell Emma this. Emma's like, fuck you guys. Well, no, she does a plan first. She's like, how can we save her? And so they're telling her, and then she runs out of the room and locks them in. She takes off down the country road with her daughter, and because and everyone is trying to tell her, you can't leave. It's the further you get away, the worse it's gonna get. And so she didn't believe them. She takes off down the road and crashes, and the other woman, I think her name was Ada, ends up with Sophia. And so by this time they bust out of the house, out of the room, and they go looking for her, and they find her but not Sophia. And so now Emma is like, okay, I've seen her. What do we have to do to get my daughter back? And this movie I thought was going to be religious horror. I thought it was an exorcism, but what it is, it's ritual magic. It is absolute ritual magic. Ada, once she becomes whatever she becomes, the reason I think she used a tarantula to enter the house and like kind of spy on the family is because once they go into her cave, she moves like a spider. Like it's so fucking creepy. And when the binding with her, and then she caught Francisco as well. Once she's, got her fangs in them, they tend to look like a fly would look once it's in a cocoon. It's like all drawn and sunken in, and she's getting her life force from these two people. And there's a ritual in the house with Teresa, Emma, because Francisco took off to go and find Sophia, and it's a really good scene because they tell her, you're going to be able to see everything. Don't confront her. We just need to know where she is. And it's so cool because she ends up like astral projecting through the potion that the woman gave her, and she ends up in this cave. And right as this spider Ada is about to get her, because she's not doing what she's told to do. They told her, don't confront her, don't make any sound. And she really can't see her because she's in her astral form, but she's like whimpering. And so Ada's like kind of like listening around to try and find her. And then she runs to Francisco trying to wake him up. And that's when Ada the spider knows where her prey is. And right before she pounces, Francisco wakes up and grabs her arm, which projects her back into his mom's house. And so then there's another ritual performed to get this woman, get the binding from the child away from Ada. It's such, I really loved the movie once. I mean, I liked it right away. I think I like magic, and I like when it's hard, and I like, I mean, Francisco, again, this is a spoiler, guys. Francisco didn't make it, and he shouldn't have, because what he did was irreprehensible, however you say that word, because the mom wasn't tripping. She was like, okay, we're gonna have a baby, right? Like, they're 19, they're young, it happens. We have a baby on the way, no big deal, right? But Francisco's like, no, I need to go to the city. She's ruining my life. The mom, usually like when like if you guys have seen Who Killed Sarah on Netflix, the mom was tripping over how young her son was, and they're about to have a baby. But with this movie, she didn't care. She's like, whatever, right? And so he was begging her. He's like, think about it, get an abortion, let's do something else. And she's like, nope, I'm having a baby. And so everyone else around them was like, well, she's having a baby, let's go ahead and plan this wedding. And Francisco didn't want that. And so he did this ritual, and it didn't go well. So in the end, he pays for it because he doesn't live. But it's the ending where the women do finally triumph. Teresa has to make peace with the fact that she, for this whole entire time, decided to protect her son. She kind of knew the error of her ways the minute Sophia walked into the house, because then she's trying to protect Sophia. And then once her son is dead, then her whole focus is returned back to Sophia and Emma. And they have like this little bond. They're like, okay, this is going to be their little family. But for whatever reason, they don't leave that fucking villa. And so at the end of the movie, we see that this might not be over.
The funny thing is, because of Emma's background as a civil engineer, she was, like we were talking about, in a binding, that scientific mind that refuses to accept anything supernatural, spiritual, or otherworldly. And she's that character that just didn't believe anything that Teresa told her
until it was too late. Yeah,
I did like the camera work and cinematography in this. I thought they did a really great job with that.
One of the things that I liked was the aerial shots of the gorge, because it looked like how I would imagine if the Grand Canyon was full of trees and lush greenery, because it's just that big. But it's like, it has grapevines and it has trees and it's lush and there's birds and apparently giant fucking tarantulas, however you say that word, in Italy. So I'm gonna have to scratch that off my list. And that's another thing. And even when she first, like, little kids always fucking run around climbing trees and shit. Even when she was climbing the tree, right on the other side was a spider. Like,
oh yeah, there was a really great scene where she runs after the dog, and you see all the overturned trees, and then the camera shows the girl standing there, and you can't see what she's looking at first, and then it slowly pans over to where the dog is. And I thought that was just beautifully executed. And there's also a lot of scenes where they show people walking through the house, and some filmmakers might not think that that's important, but it is, because it gives people a connection to where the people are at. Just showing people walking through the house, it gives you an idea, okay, this is what's upstairs, what's downstairs, and it makes the location more solid. The other thing that makes things solid is showing people leaving and coming. Some of the newer movies, it's almost like people teleport. They have a conversation and then boom, they're somewhere else.
Right.
It's important to have those little shots of people walking out the door and getting in the car, or having the car pull up and then getting out the car and walking in someplace.
I think
it might not seem like.
I like the fact that there were other people in the house, because it just emphasized how big that house was.
Yes.
The house was huge. It had like a, not exactly a spiral staircase, but let me see if I can remember a movie that we all saw with those type of stairs that are just like, it would have to have been like a movie from Alfred Hitchcock in black and white, but like the huge, there's a foyer, a real foyer, and then the stairs that go to the first level, the second level, and then when you get to the top, you can look over the banister and see all the way down. And they show that because she's looking down. She's like, Sophia, like, where are you? And she's downstairs somewhere. Kids always always in places where they're not supposed to be. And
it reminded me a lot of the 1970s filmmaking. I definitely say that. There's a scene that was funny. It wasn't meant to be funny, but there's a scene where Sophia's up at night and she's standing in the corner and she's looking up at this watermark spot, and she's like scratching.
You thought that was funny?
Not me. What my sister said. She comes
where she was all the way like she almost looked like she would be possessed.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't think that was funny.
She comes walking out of the kitchen and sees that one scene, because she's not watching the movie at all. She just sees that one scene and says, that's not a possession. That's how kids on that ADHD medicine act. And I had to laugh because, yeah, there has been times when people in my own family, when they give the kids the ADHD medicine, it sometimes make them do weird things like go and stand in a corner scratching. Like,
oh my God.
That great. But
that fired for that.
That's just hilarious.
Fired for that. She's fired for that. So
we gotta insert, must be a crackhead that got a hold of some wrong stuff.
Could be a crackhead that got hold to the wrong stuff.
Wow. Oh my God.
You remember that video with the leprechaun?
Yes. Jeez. I liked it. What did you think? Like, what's your commentary on the movie?
It grew on me. When it first started, you know how I am about the color grading, and you already know, I don't have to, I feel like a broken record. But I liked, this is another one that won me over because of the ending. I really wasn't here for this movie. I really was like, oh my God, this is terrible. Because I thought it was going to lead up to, an exorcism of Sophia, and it didn't do that at all. It went into a totally different direction.
Because it wasn't it wasn't a religious movie. It was a magic. It's about magic.
So it was on me that I put expectations on the movie that
because you watched the wrong one.
Yeah. But they both involved a daughter. Both families had a daughter. One daughter was just older than the other daughter.
Oh boy. Okay, I'll give you that. I guess.
Let me see if I have anything. Did I make any notes about anything else? Yeah, I was gonna say that most of the scare set pieces, they're all kind of things you've seen before, but they were still executed all right. I wouldn't say anything was awesome, but it wasn't bad either. It was just like in the middle.
I think some of the reason why, the reason that those trees were turned over, because remember when Emma came back and she, from her astral travels, and she tells the woman that they're in a cave, and they look at each other like, oh my God. I think they were like digging up those,
trying to find her,
to keep her where she was.
Oh, because
when the dog was growling at the tree, there was a little opening in it, and that's where she came through. And I think that's kind of like in some of the movies, or some, not the movies, but some of the belief systems in Southeast Asia are bells. And when you hear bells, it's because the spirits are moving past them. And so that tree that she climbed, there was a bell there, and she was trying to reach it off, remember? And then there was where that spider was, the first spider that we saw. And then Francisco runs up and he snatches her down from the tree, and they're playing. I really believe that Francisco loved the hell out of this little girl. Like when you see them together and just the way that they are, he really did love this little girl as his own. And there was a scene where Emma tells Teresa, she's like, sometimes I'm jealous of the relationship. And she's like, you know, don't be jealous, because a mother's bond is strong. But that was a foreboding warning about what was to happen, because Ada, you know, he took her baby from her. I'm just like still very angry at the choice that he made.
Oh, speaking of, you mentioned belief systems, you were talking about in Asia. I noticed at the very end of this movie, the photographs that they put, I'm assuming they were real photographs. They were so interesting. It made me want to see a documentary about like what in the Italian culture binding is, or where it came about and that type of practice.
Yeah, in the beginning of the movie, I was talking about how it's like these types of rituals are very steeped within the Italian culture. It's just like, Italian magic is just as strong as African magic, and both of them are completely different than European magic. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's just something different about and what they were doing. Like, and I thought that it was really interesting at the first ritual, there was a priest there, and that's not unusual for when you're dealing with like rituals and summoning spells, and when you're conjuring things, that you do use the word of God, because there's no word stronger than that. And so I wasn't surprised to see that priest there at the beginning of the movie when they were doing what they were doing. After we find out, like, you know, because they fast forward, we find out in the middle what was going on, where he put that holy water down her throat, and it was just both the church and the pagans working together for a common good, and that's not uncommon, at least not from, you know, what I'm familiar with.
I was gonna say, I forgot what I was gonna say actually. Yeah. The most, this is gonna sound really stereotypical, but the most I know about Italian magic is when Sophia on the Golden Girls used to do like this with her fingers and say, "I'm giving you the evil eye."
Which is interesting because in the beginning of the movie they do mention the evil eye. Did you remember that? So
yes.
Yeah, I think we've got a research project.
There's also a movie, oh God, was this also Jordan Peele? No, it was Blumhouse. It was Jason Blum. On Amazon, last fall, they produced 4 direct to Amazon movies. And one of them was called The Evil Eye. And that's the Eastern India, though. Yeah, I know, but I wondered what similarities they have, because there are things that are in different cultures, like the wailing woman or the weeping woman that is present in every culture. She has all these different names, but everyone has seen her.
I think it might be a little bit different, because the evil eye, because I've seen that movie, from what I understand, the way they were presenting it, the evil eye is to keep you safe from evil. Because did you see the movie?
Yeah, I saw. Okay. I reviewed it.
So remember, she had the bracelet on, and that was the evil eye. And she's like, "Did you wear it? Did you wear it?" And she's like, "Yeah." But the minute she took it off is when everything went to hell in a handbasket. Yeah. So I think it's completely different but we just have to find out, because I think we have a research project. So
I should say, if anyone is watching us and they are from Italy and know more about binding and evil eye, leave us a comment, please. We want to learn.
We do want to learn. So yeah, that was my feeling for the binding. I liked it. It wasn't what I was expecting, because I too was expecting religious horror. And it turned out to be magic, occult horror. So I'm very happy about that, because I like occult horror too. So I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. I don't always, you guys probably think she gives all her movies a 5. I don't. You guys should check out my channel and see some of the reviews that I've done. Not all these movies get a 5. But if I like it, and another thing is, because I reviewed this movie. Wait, which movie are we talking about? The Binding. Yeah, I reviewed this movie for Horror Addicts, and I always say, the more I scream at a movie, the more fun I'm having. And you know what? Emma pissed me off. I was screaming at her. I couldn't believe some of the stuff that she was doing. And then I was like mad at Francisco. Like I was screaming at these people, like from the moment where she tried to the moment she locked them in and tried to escape, I lost my mind. But if I'm like not engaged, if I'm not like screaming at the movie, if I'm not like how Sasha said about another movie we were watching where she was playing on her phone. I have seen movies like that before and they don't get a 5 star. So trust me, I don't always give my movies 5 stars, but this one I really like because of the ending and because it turned out to be something that I didn't think that it was. And so, yes, that's why it's getting 5 stars.
I have to say the same thing because I'm about to give it a 3.5 also. And people be like, she never gets anything higher than 3.5 for scale. So people know what my scale is. A 1 or the worst or a half of a star would be something like oh God, the title is escaped. No, Cloverfield's about a 2. The movie I talked about last week, the found footage movie with the kids in the high school. Why can't I remember the name of it? The Gallows. That's a 1. That's a 1.
Okay.
A 5 for me would be something like Parasite. Like that is amazing. I've watched it 3 times. I'll probably watch it, 20 more times. That's a 5 for me. Get Out. That's a 5 for me because every time I watch it, there's always other things, little things that I can pick up on that I didn't notice before. So it's not that I'm trying to be a hard ass. It's just the scale has been moved.
And we grew up watching 70s horror, so
yes,
like that's a hard
70s and 80s. If it's not The Exorcist is a 5. So if The Exorcist is a 5 out of 5, how can I give this more than 3.5? That's if we're on a scale 5.
And right, and so I have a list of Exorcist movies that I love a lot, and there are some that, like, when I give an Exorcist movie a 5, it's because it is, I call it a descendant of The Exorcist.
Yes, like this.
I did a review called "Welcome to Mercy." Dudes, I don't give anything more than a 5, but in my review, I said that this would be a tie or surpasses The Master because this movie is so fucking incredible that I was just like, it blew me away.
I have to watch that one, but I want to pair it with Saint Maud. I feel like Saint Maud might be in its ballpark if I'm going based on the trailer.
Okay. I need to watch Saint Maud, so maybe we can do that at a future episode where we do Saint Maud and Welcome to Mercy.
I just have it because I don't think it's on any streaming platform that I have.
Yeah, the last time we talked about it, we couldn't find it anywhere either.
Yeah, so whenever it drops on Amazon, that's when I'll take a look at it.
Let me know when it drops on Amazon too, because I am not getting another streaming. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I don't care. So yeah. Before
we end this, because I know somebody's probably going to ask us in the comments. Have you seen the trailer for the series Them? And how do you feel about watching that?
I think I'm gonna skip it because it looks like more Black trauma porn, and I'm kind of good with that. So my feeling is, like, when we first started getting horror movies, or like not necessarily horror movies, but once we as Black people were being positively represented in movies, it was civil rights and slave revolts and like movies like The Help, right? It was always in servitude. I kind of don't like those movies at all. So, and then there were so many of them that I was just like, and I just don't like them. We get Out, and it's fucking amazing. And now it seems our next arc is going to be Black trauma porn. I'm not going to watch. I tried to watch American Son, and it's on Netflix. It's devastating. It's so good, and you might not like it because it doesn't have a score, because it is done and it's a bottle film, but it's done like if you were watching it on as a play, but they don't shy away from anything, and it is brutal. It is a brutal, hard watch. I was fucked up for a couple of days after I saw it. And then there was the movie about the kid who was killed on the subway station.
Yeah, I don't watch any of those.
Yeah, and so it seems like them is kind of like that. Now, a lot of people think that the North is like the safe haven for Blacks because that's where everyone was running away. No, up here in the North is probably more racist than in the South because it's subtle, it's microaggression. I'm in Washington State. I live in Seattle. This used to be a sundown town. And some of the stuff that's going on in them, from what I'm reading in the comments, that just happened to our parents. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It hasn't been a long enough time. Like when I watched the first 2 episodes and I said I'm not gonna finish it because I don't need to, because I literally can walk into the room across the house from me and talk to my grandmother about what happened, because her and my grandfather and my mom, my aunt and uncle went through this literally when they moved to East Hartford, Connecticut. My mother told me when she was a little girl that the neighbors, they had a German Shepherd, that the neighbors killed their dog, broke the dog's back, just sick stuff like that. And one of the reasons why they were able to get the house that they got, the former family that lived there before them were Jewish and they got tormented. And so they just made it their point that, okay, I'm going to sell it to another minority since you want to mess with us and treat us like trash. I'm going to make sure another white person doesn't get this house. But I'm only 1 generation removed from that. So I don't really need to see that, because my mother can tell you from when she was a little girl and saw the whites only fountains, because she's 67 years old.
Right.
But apparently some people do need to see this, because there's a whole generation that I don't know whether their grandparents didn't talk to them or
it's not in this, like it really is systematic, right? Because I think last year, it just seems like 2019 or 2020 was 5 years long. So back when the kids used to go to school in public and sit next to each other in Texas, they remade the history books and they called slaves immigrant workers.
Oh yeah.
So and this is why people don't get it. Like they're like, oh, there's no racism. It's because people do what they because of the white guilt, or like if we don't talk about it, it's not going to go away. Like it's just not going to go away. And I'm tired of talking about it, because you want to act obtuse and act like you don't know what I'm talking about. Fine. I have no problem leaving people where they are. I will cut you off.
I'm at that point in my life. Like when I was 20 years old, I was at that, let me explain something. But at this stage, I'm like, no, I'm not explaining. You have Google. You want to find out about it, you can go research it. It's not my job to teach you. Sorry. I'm
just like everyone felt like there was like this how can I say it? Everyone started researching the Black Wall Street when they were watching the Watchmen.
I was about to bring that up.
So I think that these shows are, I guess, important for white people,
certain demographic,
but not
and for people outside, and also from people outside the United States. I watched a review, and the person was reviewing the show in India, and they're just recounting, and then the white people did this and that and the other, and I was like, that's good for them to know and see. And I think it's especially good for some Africans in Africa to see, because sometimes in our interactions with them, because they don't learn about, which is not their fault, they don't learn about this type of history. They have their own countries that they're learning their own historical information about, but there's a certain cavalier attitude that some people have towards us that's like, well, why are you this way? And they don't understand the psychological trauma that we went through that they didn't go through. If all their teachers are Black and their government's Black, not to say that there isn't class issues there and intertribal issues, it's not the same. And then
they think for them to see some of this, because they, like my sister had an interaction with a cab driver who cut her off, and I don't remember if he cut her off or he almost hit her or whatever, but when they were talking, he got all pissed off. He's like, you're not African American, you're just Black. And my sister was like, what? And I've had that same kind of interaction with other African people in the United States. They just like look, it's so interesting how POC, people of color who are immigrants, come to this country and treat Black people. Like, I don't need to see it. I don't, are you kidding? No, I'm not watching them.
And I also think that it's great, like some people were upset that the actors playing a lot of times in these, including in this show, are African actors from England. And I'm like, no, good. Let them play these roles. We don't need these roles.
Right.
I guess if you can, hide your London accent and do this thing, hey, more power to you, because we don't need that. But back to your other point on how people of color immigrants see it. I've seen it even within my own family, because my grandfather is Jamaican and he didn't always have the best things to say about Black American people, even though he married one. And I'm just like, it's real messed up.
To say the least, right?
But from his perspective, he thought that people over here didn't work as hard because, as he would say, in Jamaica, there's no welfare, which is true. There is no, at that time when he came through, there was no welfare. You don't work, you don't eat. So he couldn't understand the welfare mentality, but you're ascribing that mentality to just Black people. And there's that's not. I watched this whole series. I can't remember the name of it, but it took place in the council estates. It was a documentary series about the council estates in Ireland and England. And every single thing that you see present in the hood in the United States is exactly the same there, even though they're white people living in the project. So certain things are more poverty things than cultural. Well, there is a cultural poverty, but racial things.
That reminded me of something that your grandfather said. When I had a part-time job as I was working on the campus of the Washington University, and I was collecting compost and trash, and this Asian woman asked me, she's like, because it was just a part-time job, and she's like, in the beginning when we went, we always like have a meeting at the beginning of the shift, and so as that meeting was over, and I was the newest person to the team, and she's like, do you have another job? And I'm like, oh no, it's just this one. And she's like, you only have one job? And I'm like, yeah, I only have one job. And she's like, oh, you're very lazy. And it just reminded me of what your grandfather, when you said that, it reminded me of that. And then it reminded me of that skit from In Living Color where the Jamaicans and the Asians were like, I have 800 jobs. And they were like trying to outdo each other. So that kind of like reminded me
that
of that.
Used to be me. I had all through my 20s, I had 2 and 3 jobs. And
God,
so I didn't. I worked myself into a hospital. I ended up hospitalized because during the daytime, I was working for an insurance company from 9 to 4. Then I worked at a movie theater from 5 to 11. And then 3 nights a week, I worked the overnight shift at a grocery store.
Jeez,
and it's ridiculous. That's not, you're living, but you're not alive. You're not really living.
Oh my God, that's exactly how the undead happens. You're just like shuffling around on autopilot, eating whatever like you can get your hands on. So,
and your work suffers when you're that tired. You can't possibly do a good job at work.
Yeah.
But I had bought into that mentality of just
working and working and working and working. Wow.
Yeah, during my younger years when I should have been traveling or doing other things, it was just always just working until I couldn't anymore. And then I end up, going back to school and just trying to get my life together.
Now that you're not working so much, now once we, it looks like we're trying to get better, maybe by next year you can start traveling.
Yes.
I want to come see you in Florida because I want to go to that town.
Yes, it's going to be fun. I bought a new little passport book. You know how you have the little covers that you could put. I bought one. It was pink with butterflies. I was like, I'm gonna go somewhere.
That's gonna be awesome. So sorry, you guys. We always like have a rant at the end of our videos. I don't understand what's wrong.
But that's what makes this show different from every other show. You're gonna get the real here.
Absolutely. So that was our take on The Binding. Got 2 movies for the price of 1. Do you have
and half a TV show?
and a TV show, right? Are you guys going to talk about that on Hood Podcast?
I'm not sure. Jay said that he's watched like 6 episodes. He might finish it. I don't think I am. Like I had considered it, but I'm just like, it's not worth it to me because of the level. Like I would have loved to see a great supernatural show, which it does have supernatural elements. It has like they're living in a house that is kind of similar to the Amityville house or the Poltergeist house, but then you add in all this extra like racism stuff, and I'm like, I don't really need to be beat over the head with this. I'd rather just see the scary parts. But everything isn't for everybody. It's not for me. Maybe younger people who don't get these history lessons in school, and it'll be good for them.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch it either. It's just it's too much. And then,
I'd rather you give us like blaxploitation again. Give us Blackula. I'd rather see that.
Right.
At least it's fun.
Okay, so I think that's what we're going to call it, guys. Another thing that you guys, if you're going to be watching them, and if you're looking for the stuff that we're talking about, one of the things that I want you guys to take a look at, if you want to, is research the sundown towns. And that will give you a better depth of what you're seeing right now if you're watching them.
They did bring that up in Lovecraft Country, which you do have to watch, because they not only bring up the sundown town, they place the sundown town in Massachusetts, which I was glad they did, so that they can, let people know that this stereotype of just being down south is not how it was. Okay,
so Lovecraft Country is on my list. But I have writing to do. So I'm really trying to limit the time I sit in front of a TV binge watching. I have a lot of movies I need to review for Horror Addicts. I have some movies I need to review on my own for my own channel. And I'm still writing. So it's on my list. Every time I see someone writing about Love Country, I just scroll right by it. But when people are talking about them, I read it, because I know I'm not going to watch it, and then each commentary I see just reinforces the fact that I'm not going to watch it.
I should add before we close, because I'm sure somebody's going to ask, why was I able to watch Lovecraft Country but not them, even though they both take place in the 50s? Because even though there were racist elements in Lovecraft Country, I'll give one spoiler. You get to see them get eaten by monsters. So it's like, oh, this person's racist, then they get eaten by monsters. So you're like, okay, cool.
And it might be like a different type of racism. I think them is like, that is 90% of it. Like, when they're like sitting out like in front of this lawn, like the intimidation tactics and like we
and a percentage of the story
dealing with that. Like,
I would say with Lovecraft Country, it's like 75% horror. No, I would say 85% horror, 15% racism. Them, it's like the opposite. It's like 85% racism, 15% horror. Yeah, it's this. Yeah, you gotta adjust the levels.
It doesn't sound like it's the one for me. So
I've read that most of the directors of the episodes have been European American. Only one episode is actually directed by a Black director. So maybe that's why they couldn't tell how much is too much. Like, you wouldn't make a horror show that's basically Schindler's List every day, but with ghosts. Like, it's not, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I didn't hear that part, but I'm good. I saw the trailer, and at first I was like, oh my God. And then I saw more and more trailers, and then I was like, oh my God. So yeah.
It's more brutal than Beloved, and that was pretty brutal.
I'm good. You don't have to say nothing else. I'm good. That was hard.
So that's the end of our Coast to Coast show. What a transition. Have you seen either of the Bindings? If you are Italian and you know more about the history of the second Binding we watched, feel free to leave us a comment. What would you rate either of these 2 movies? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Which one did you like more?
Yes,
2016 or the international 2020? That would be interesting to know as well. And if any of you guys watched the 2014 Binding, let us know what that movie is about, because we found that by accident, because Sasha over here was like doing her own thing and watching her own movie.
No, I didn't. I really thought I was supposed to watch the 2020 binding and not the 20 was it 2016?
2016.
I think 2016, yeah.
So that's it, you guys. Thanks.
Right.
Oh, you gotta close us off. Like, we can't just leave without your sign off.
I just did the sign off. I'll do it again though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, until our next episode.
Bye.